What's up, guys? Now, in the 3-week emptiness of the UFC and Conor McGregor's return in Horizon, there's been a lot of training talk going on involving Conor McGregor, right? First, the noticeable size difference going up to 170 specifically for the fight with Cowboy Cerrone, which I covered in my podcast. Just in short, I think it's a great strategy for him to probably get a little bit more physical against a slow starting Donald Cerrone, who doesn't deal well with boxers usually, or straight punches in general. And then we had the interview with Conor McGregor talking about all sort of things, different opponents, who he sees next, what he sees in Donald Cerrone, and now we have John Kavanagh coming out and him saying that Conor McGregor has taken control of his training camp. I believe Conor also alluded to this as well. And of course, you're going to have critics and at least some people who are interested, intrigued by this change in his training camp, right? It can go as far as being a disaster, causing him to lose this, maybe not getting the right kind of training or getting the right kind of discipline in his training camp that usual fighters get and usual fighters need for themselves, right? Most fighters just cannot be their own head coach or be in control of everything that's going on before a fight, right? Most fighters need someone to call the shots, and they are pretty much just that barbarian, that gladiator just goes through all the physical stuff until fight night. They don't have to deal with the mental pressures or deal with the calculations and the game plan, right? But then there are special, unique fighters who take control of their training camps and have become very successful doing so, right? Floyd Mayweather is one. Floyd Mayweather is someone who picks his training partners, picks which coach on what day trains him, picks what he does for his cardio, picks when he wants to hit the bag, all sort of stuff, right? And he's an undefeated boxer, one of the greatest of all time. And this also isn't foreign to MMA. In fact, Conor McGregor's opponent, Donald Cerrone, is known to be the head coach of his training camp, especially ever since he left Jackson Wink. He has his own gym, he built himself, he flies in coaches that he wants, and he flies in training partners that he wants, and for sure there are going to be days where there is no other coach, it's just him, and he has a bunch of fighters around and they just train with each other. And Cerrone has been successful doing that. He had multiple runs doing just that. And you also do have Tony Ferguson, who is the prime example of this, someone who had coaches in the past and trained with everybody, went to the Ultimate Fighter, which is pretty much a training program, and for several years now has gone and chose his coaches to his liking, chose the environment to his benefit in Big Bear, literally built his entire gym from scratch just for himself to train. He doesn't want any other fighters around, it's just for himself, and he has his own schedule. I believe Eddie Bravo, his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu coach, has said multiple times, emphasized that Tony Ferguson is his own head coach. He's the one that comes up with the schedule. He's the one that comes up with what they're going to do that day, right? Whether it be running up a mountain, whether it be I'm going to do jiu-jitsu today, striking today, whatever it is, Tony Ferguson's the guy that comes up with all the plans and everybody else just goes by the plan. It doesn't mean that Tony Ferguson or Conor McGregor or Donald Cerrone are going to be the ones that know Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu more than their coach or know striking more than their coach or wrestling, whatever it is, whatever discipline it is. It doesn't necessarily mean they believe they know more of that aspect of martial arts more than the coach, more than the specialist. Being the head coach of the training camp, controlling it, usually means you bring in the coaches that you want, and the reason why you have coaches is so they can use their knowledge of their specialty and teach you specifically for a fight. So for Donald Cerrone, of course he's going to have John Kavanagh and Dylan Dennis there, the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu coaches, help him in case it goes to the ground, right? They know more about that aspect than Conor does. I believe Conor knows more about striking than everybody in that training camp, to be honest. Or at least most. I don't know if he's going to fly someone else in or something like that. That's what the beauty is in being the head coach of your training camp, is that maybe you think you need other striking coaches in your training camp, and you can go about and make that plan to get those coaches in, or different sparring partners, right? Usually the head coach is the one that drives all factors for success. And like I said before, many fighters just don't have that ability to get into the mental side of training camp like that. They don't have the ability to become their own head coach. Again, some unique fighters are able to do both. They are able to hold the controller as well as being the main focus of the training camp. And it always comes with uniqueness in the game. Tony Ferguson is extremely unique. I've talked about this before, that Tony Ferguson is probably the most, or one of the most important martial artists of our generation. And it's because of his mentality to fighting, mentality to martial arts, and how he does things very different to the norm, different from the usual fundamentals that coaches around the world will train everybody, right? And he flips things on its head. Conor McGregor, before he came into the UFC, he was a unique fighter as well. He did things that nobody else was doing. Fighting almost like a fencer with a dynamite of a left hand, his movement, his stance, a lot of things you see today, you didn't see when Conor first bursted onto the UFC. A lot of people, if not mimicked, what Conor was doing, they absorbed aspects of his game to benefit themselves of how successful Conor McGregor actually was, right? But because we see a lot of people use things that Conor uses today, it doesn't seem as unique, but he's the guy that started a lot of what he's doing. So he definitely does have the uniqueness to his game, and that comes from his mentality. So I believe Conor, yes, he's not Tony Ferguson, yes, he's not Donald Cerrone, but what they have in common is they are pretty special in the fight game. Not so much physically, but mentally. And you also have to know uniqueness of a fighter is not going to be trained by the coach. Unless that coach has a similar style, or they have that uniqueness mentally as well, just like the fighter does, you're not going to see fighters like Conor McGregor. You're not going to see fighters like Tony Ferguson. You're going to see a lot more textbook fighters who stick by the book. But because you have these extraordinary styles and very unorthodox techniques being used out there, those things specifically usually comes from the fighter. They are not taught those certain things, right? Look at Bryce Mitchell. Bryce Mitchell pulled off the twister in his last fight, and he said he learned that from YouTube. John Jones said he used to train himself by watching YouTube videos. Max Holloway said he was training himself before by playing the UFC video game. And all of these guys are unique. They have styles and they go by techniques that nobody else does, because this all came from their own head. It didn't come from anywhere else. It came from their creativity in the fight game. So I really don't see any problem with Conor McGregor, a focused, motivated, and obsessed Conor McGregor to become his own head coach and control his training camp. I see no problem in it. If he's not in the right state of mind, I don't even think Conor's dumb enough to actually go about this, right? I think he understands, he is motivated enough. He wants this enough. He wants to defeat Donald Cerrone. He wants to get to the top again. He wants to be competitive. I believe Conor is logical enough to understand the nuances in the game and when and how to make decisions in the sport. Conor has never struck me as a buffoon in the fighting game or anything like that. Conor is always shown to have extreme high fight IQ. And even before, I don't even think this is the first time Conor's going to do something like this. I mean, he brought in movement coaches and stuff long time ago. He's done things and called the shots in his training camp many a times, right? He went to go train with Gunnar Nelson before. He went to go in Iceland. So a little bit of me thinks that some people are blowing this out of proportion. They're criticizing a little bit too much, and it's because it's Conor McGregor and it's just a little bit different to the usual stuff that they know about, and it is his return. They want to see everything a lot more safe. They wanted to see more safety to his training camp rather than doing things completely different than his last fight or a previous fight before that. He didn't like the training camp in the Khabib fight. He thought the training camp went poorly and that caused him to lose the fight. And he believes the fight went differently than it actually went in reality. And this ultimately could throw him off in the fight with Donald Cerrone, because maybe that training camp against Khabib was actually a good training camp. It might have been. And he just doesn't know that, and he's going off of what he sees in his perception of what a good training camp should be like, and that's him controlling it. Maybe it's a complete disaster, but I don't believe that, to be honest. I believe it's something Conor is thinking thoroughly. His coaches will definitely have some input if it's the wrong decision, right? John Kavanagh doesn't strike me as like an illogical man either. Yeah, I don't see anything too wrong with this one. Even if Conor loses to Cerrone, I know there are going to be people that say that the size difference caused him to lose, or the training camp caused him to lose. Again, Donald Cerrone does have now and always had a way to beat Conor McGregor. Even the Conor that fought Eddie Alvarez, Cerrone could beat that Conor McGregor with the right approach. He has the wrestling, he has a different kind of striking, he has a good chin, he has the veteran experience, he has the cardio. After 2 rounds, 3 maybe, Donald Cerrone should comfortably be able to beat Conor McGregor. He is a better wrestler. He is a better grappler. People say, but you know, he fought Eddie Alvarez, and Alvarez has all sort of different skills. Cerrone's a better striker. He's a better kicker. He's better with range. He's way taller. He's way longer. He has better time takedowns. He has better grappling overall. He's usually not out of position. And Cerrone even destroyed Eddie Alvarez when they fought each other, right? So it doesn't mean, you know, because Conor loses to Cerrone that these are the reasons. You got to really see the fight first, right? If Conor just doesn't show up like his usual self, if he just looks complete off, right, his punches are labored, his stance has changed completely and it's just not working, right, if there's a tactic he's using that is not normal for him and he's trying to use against Cerrone because he was the head of his training camp and it's just failing against Cerrone, then yes, you could say the training camp switch caused him to probably lose this fight or put him in dire situations. If he looks like his usual self and he's doing things that a lot of people think, oh yeah, that should work against Donald Cerrone, but then he just get caught or something like that, that's not a great excuse to his change in training camp. But I will say this training camp control for Conor McGregor probably shouldn't be a good switch if he's ever going to fight Khabib, unless he changes his mentality about how the fight went. Imagine that he thinks he was winning the fight against Khabib entirely, and he becomes the head coach of his training camp, and he's in charge of what he changes for that rematch. It most likely would not go well for him. That's just my opinion. Leave a comments below what you guys think about this. What do you guys think about the whole change with Conor McGregor? Not only his training camp, but also his size and his mentality in the interview. Like, everything together, because the fight's coming up pretty soon. And I am going to have a breakdown on Conor McGregor, how he lines up the left hand. I'm going to have that sometime later this week, so be looking for that. That should be very interesting coming into their fight. My podcast is also going to come out this week, and my prediction video is going to come out early next week, so be looking for all those, and I'll see you guys in the next one.